All right. So, yeah, let's talk about the five languages of appreciation and how they can help create a positive workplace culture. I like to have some fun, and here's a starting point. Oops. This guy says the corporate culture here, he's being asked, it's junior high school without the acne. And you can interpret that how you want, but a lot of workplaces, unfortunately, aren't healthy, and the culture is pretty damaging. I want to ask you to think about the number one factor that affects how much people enjoy their jobs and give you a hint that it's not money. I mean, we all would like to earn a little bit more money. And if they offer it, we're not going to give it back. But research really shows, actually over now 100 years, that money does not increase our sense of satisfaction. And there's a series of studies, but one of the more interesting ones done by MIT and the Sloan School of Business during the Great Resignation found that not feeling appreciated was 3 times more likely to predict people leaving than compensation issues. And most managers believe that people leave for more money. You may get more money if you leave, but it and so you become dissatisfied, and then you have to go look for it. And so feeling appreciated can create a connectivity, and clearly that's a big issue these days during problems with high rates of turnover. Also, I would say that research shows that people don't enjoy their job just because they're recognized, and we're going to sort of differentiate between recognition and appreciation. And let me start by, there's sort of 4 major misconceptions business leaders and organizational leaders have about appreciation. And one is about the relationship between recognition and appreciation. They clearly overlap. I mean, you can recognize and appreciate somebody for something they've done, but sometimes it looks like this. This guy says, every time you do something right, I'll punch your rewards card. And when you reach 10,000 punches, you earn a high five. And in a lot of organizations, unfortunately, you got to do a lot of things to get not much. And obviously that doesn't work. Now we've got to learn how to scale things, but that's not a great place to start. So just so you understand conceptually, we differentiate between employee recognition and authentic appreciation, because clearly you can recognize somebody and not really appreciate them. And authenticity is important to us. So I'm not about trying to teach you how to look like you appreciate somebody, but more how to truly value somebody. And we even deal with in our book and our training what to do when you're struggling with appreciating somebody. And it's important to understand that what motivates people and what makes them feel valued and appreciated are 2 different issues. We can be motivated towards goals, achievement, rewards, but that's not necessarily going to make us feel valued. And in fact, I had one friend who was a high-performing salesperson for a health organization. And when we were talking about our concept and books, she laughed and she said, my organization, they don't care about me at all. As long as I'm producing, that's what's important. If I quit producing, I've got problems. And that's true. I mean, work is about work. We need to get things done. But one of the things that we emphasize is, and in our training, we go through a lot of different parts, but people say, Paul, just sort of net it out. What do you think is the main difference between recognition and appreciation as it's sort of implemented and activated during these days? I would say recognition is largely focused on performance, which is fine and good. We want people to do the right thing. We want them to achieve results and goals. And recognition is designed to do that. And when it's designed and implemented well and consistently, it works. And that's why it's become popular and successful. But we believe that appreciation is about the person as well, that we are all employees, team members, regardless of your level, we have value as people. And we're not just producers, we're not just work units. And so that, we believe that people have value regardless of their performance level. And this is important to know and understand because research has shown that most recognition and reward activity really focuses on the top 10 to 15% of any organization or group. that leaves the big middle group of 50 to 60% of maybe the rest of us that are good, we're solid, we try, but we don't hear anything because we're not at the top. And also there are times in our lives where we're not, the top producer. Either we're in a new position, we're learning something, or maybe there's other life factors. I think COVID sort of taught us that life and work intersect. And, I had twins, my wife and I did, and it was 2 years of sleep deprivation. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. After that, it was okay. But at that point, I wasn't the best professional. And did I need goals to motivate me? No, I needed support. I needed people to understand me. And that's really our focus, is that sort of the human side of working together and appreciating each other beyond just what we get done. And I'll admit, because the book came out in 2011, and actually we just put out a new version where I updated the research and rewrote the chapter on remote and hybrid employees. And early on, I was sort of negative about employee recognition because at that time it was very superficial and wasn't working. But over time, I really see that there's a place for both, that it's really together a both and approach of recognition from a more formal point of view within the organization, and then authentic appreciation that sort of fills in the gaps at a personal level can really be powerful. And the organizations that we've seen work those together really have created a synergy that they're able to move forward, keep their people, and get things done. Second misconception that people have is the goal of appreciation. I grew up in the context of family and business leaders sometimes are pretty results and numbers oriented. And they're like, I don't really care how my people feel. I want them to get the work done. Well, the misconception is that the main goal of appreciation is to make people feel good. And I would submit to you that's not really the primary goal. I mean, we want that to happen. If, we communicate appreciation, we'd like them to feel good about themselves. But really, in the workplace, the goal of appreciation is to create a healthy, well-functioning organization. And I use sort of the image of an engine or a machine and oil. The engine has parts that work together, and they have to coordinate, and there's friction in there. It creates some heat, maybe sparks, and if there's no oil, it can get stuck, or it just takes a lot of energy to get the task done. And I really think that appreciation is like the oil within an organization, that it helps people work together well. There's less friction, tasks get done with less effort. And so it's not, I would say it's not the same as, a strategy for achieving goals, except in the overall milieu. So what happens, and we in our book, in the second chapter, there's sort of a return on investment of appreciation. We cite over 50 research studies that show a whole bunch of things. These are just some generalities. We know when team members feel valued, they tend to show up more versus call in sick. There's a more positive cooperative environment rather than sort of that territorialism when people are feeling sort of defensive about not getting credit for what they've done. Turnover clearly decreases, and that's the single largest non-productive cost that any organization has, is their turnover rate. Because then you have to retrain people. You have a gap there, relational relationships between your suppliers and clients. Problems are addressed and challenges are overcome. I mean, their work involves problems and challenges. And when people work together and are sort of accredited for doing that work together, things happen, your goals are reached. Research shows that productivity and profitability increases, and clients and strategic partners have positive experiences with you. I mean, that your people are more cheerful, they're more cooperative, get things done, rather than the experience we've all had of either somebody that's grumpy, or we don't hear back from them, or we call back and we get a different answer depending who we talk to. So a third misconception is that appreciation is the same thing as sort of verbal praise. And culturally, when we hear the word appreciation, we think about words, we think about compliments and thank you and so forth. And I would submit that that's not the full issue. In fact, that most leaders believe that for their team members, words are the main way that they feel appreciated. Part of that's an acculturation kind of issue, but part of it is clearly misguided, because we've had over 400,000 people take our online assessment, and it's in 8 languages and used on every continent except for probably Antarctica. And the reality is that the data shows that for over 50% of employees, words are not the main way that they want to be shown appreciation. So if you only use words, if you only send a note or something across the chat room or a compliment, you're going to miss really encouraging and showing appreciation to over half your team, because that's not the way they want to be shown appreciation. And so, I had to sort of get past that. I'm a psychologist. I've done some research, published peer-reviewed stuff and all that. And, we like to be complex. And sometimes I say psychologists, we discover the obvious sometimes. And so here's one that, not everybody feels appreciated in the same way. And initially, I was sort of embarrassed about how simple the concept was, but it's really saved us, I think, because the 5 languages are easy to learn. They're easy to remember, recall, and implement. And most of us don't have a lot of mental bandwidth or emotional bandwidth to try something new and implement it. And so to make it easy to happen really has been a strength of ours, actually. So we have the 5 languages. Now, they're the same in name as the 5 love languages, but they look different in how they're applied. Words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts, and yes, for you skeptics, even physical touch, and we'll talk about that. Briefly, let me give you some examples of each. Words of affirmation are words that are affirming. We are affirming the value of the person and who they are and what they've done. And the most common form is just personal one-on-one. We tell somebody, thanks for helping us figure out a computer glitch or a problem that we've had, or for sort of advocating for us in a team meeting. But it can also be written, right? And in the old days, those of us that are older, myself included, boomer generation, if you got a nice gift from your grandma, you're supposed to write a handwritten note. And that got sort of burned into our consciousness. And so we think a handwritten note is the best form of written communication. We've done research over the years, generational differences, and one of them is that it's actually sort of a generational / gender interaction effect, that for younger employees, a handwritten note doesn't really add much value to them, especially young, like 20-something guys. They don't really give a rip about, getting a handwritten note. But for that generation, what is important is the speed at which you get back to them, right? You think about the subculture, it's very fast moving. And so if they've done something that you want to call attention to, if you don't do it within 24, maybe 48 hours, you've moved into history. And so whether it's a chat, a text, an email, you need to find out which they check most often, but it can clearly be as valued as taking the time to write something by hand. Now, from our database, North America, Australia is included in this, UK, 46% of employees choose words as their primary language. So it's the single biggest group. And if you're gonna sort of guess at how to communicate appreciation to somebody you don't know their language, words is not a bad guess, especially if you do it privately. You don't necessarily want to do it publicly unless you know that's okay. But still, it's less than half of your team members. So if you only use words, you're going to be missing a majority of your colleagues who want to be shown appreciation differently. Key part to it is being specific. We teach a model of using a person's name. We'd like to hear a name. If you are writing it, please spell their name correctly. It doesn't feel real personal if you misspell their name. Be specific about what you value about them and why it's important to you. So could be, I don't know, Becky, thanks for cleaning up after the conference last night and making sure the room was good to go, because that way we were ready for our board meeting this next morning. So their name, specifics, and why it was important. Public affirmation kinds of words, getting up in front and some kinds of recognition, award kinds of things. We've actually found that in general, 40% of employees do not want to go up in front of a large group. And it differs. Administrative assistants, it's about 60%. Librarians, it's 90%. High-performing salesmen, they're like, hey, bring the cameras, TV, bring it on. Unfortunately, sometimes those are the people that are designing these award ceremonies, and they're really sort of harming others. I had one CFO tell me, she said, I got Employee of the Year award, and I spent the 15 to 20 minutes prior to getting the award in the bathroom throwing up. She was so nervous. So if we want to make it affirming and encouraging to them, we got to do it in the way that's important to them. Quality time is the next language, and quality time is an interesting one, and actually the one that led us to take our online assessment and not only identify people's language of appreciation, but the specific actions, because we found that different people like different kinds of time. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to offer to give you the slide deck as well as a sample report and so forth. And I'll let you, I'll give you the email at the end to contact me for that. For some people, and especially for older employees and leaders, quality time is focused attention, that you get their individual time where you can either share something with them or get input from them. And that's very valuable. However, for younger workers, we found that, in fact, we went by decades. Like if you were in your 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, below 20, the younger you were, the more you wanted to hang out with your colleagues and peers. That sort of reflects the overall culture. And so I tell older leaders, if you have a team member who has quality time as their language, it doesn't mean they want time with you. Okay, you may be wonderful, you may be great, but they want to hang out with their friends, go out to lunch, go out afterwards. And so we need to pay attention to that, because we can get the language right, but the action wrong. And it's, quality time is chosen by 26% of the workforce. So it's about 1 out of every 4 employees. And actually, the younger the employee, the higher that goes. It goes up to about 34% for those that are in their 20s. So, it's sort of shifting population-wise. Acts of service are things that are small acts that make a colleague's day go better. It's not really rescuing a low-performing colleague. It's those times when you are just working on a time-limited project, and you're banging away on it, and it's what somebody can do to help make that go better. And so it could be, help do some research for you and share some of that with you as you're going along. It could be, if you're in a more hands-on trade, showing you how to get a task done, show you the right way to use a tool. Or it could be, sharing wisdom and experience. Maybe you're preparing for a presentation and how to approach this type of client. And it's not only that time limited part, but it's also in service settings, when, let's say, whether it's food service or let's say dental clinic or whatever, a whole bunch of people show up at once. And it's like, okay, how can you help out to sort of deal with the front desk? Acts of service is chosen by 21% of employees, so about 1 out of every 5. It's important to pay attention to these people, because for some of them, words really aren't important at all. And so you can be talking to them and praising them all you want, and you're going to get no response from them, because they sort of live from the mantra of, don't tell me that you support me, show me, and that words are cheap, but show up and help me out. And so what's interesting about each of these is that you can say, well, I don't have time to do that. One of the things we found is that it doesn't take much of the right action to really make a big impact. We don't want you, like a CEO was writing 300 thank you notes at Christmas time to every employee. That was sort of cool, but he wasted a lot of time, because for half of those people, it didn't really impact them. We don't want you to do the same thing for everybody. We want to save you time and energy by helping you do the most important thing for each of your colleagues. Tangible gifts is not rewards, big rewards, bonuses, raises, all that kind of stuff. That's sort of between you and the organization and your leadership. tangible gifts in our model really are just small things that show that you're getting to know your colleagues and what they like. Again, think about appreciation being personal, person to person. So it's something like food. In fact, food is the most commonly given gift in the workplace. Could be bringing in somebody's favorite cup of coffee or a special hot chocolate or tea or whatever they might like. Also, we know that gift cards are actually the second most given gift in terms of appreciation. We did some research. I think there was, I don't know, 100,000 people in this study about what kind of gift cards they want. And wouldn't you guess, there's two groups. There's the group that likes generic gift cards, so Visa and Amazon or whatever, so they can sort of choose how to use it. And then there are people that don't want that because they don't want to be tempted to use it for just daily life expenses. They want a specific one to maybe their bookstore that they like, or iTunes, or their favorite coffee shop. And so one of the things we found in our use of our inventory, that it was important to identify people's language of appreciation, but then the specific actions and from whom they want those. So for example, quality time, you may want to get together and watch your favorite team in a sporting event, but you're not going to invite your boss. And so we allow people to choose both the action and from whom they want that. And interestingly, with tangible gifts, it doesn't have to cost anything either, right? And in some of the questions that came in, it's like, how do you do the low cost kind of thing? We don't have a lot of money. Well, if you think about it, words doesn't cost anything as far as financially. Time doesn't. Acts of service don't. Gifts don't have to either. In fact, in our model, we've learned that it's really the mantra that says it's the thought that counts fits here, because it's not about the amount, but that you got to know them. So it could be something online as well. It could be maybe they're starting to coach their kids' soccer team, and you find a website that has some cool training activities that they can use. So, and it's also about their hobbies, right? It could be about maybe they're going to plant a garden, and so you get one of the magazines at the grocery store, the pharmacy, and it costs $10, but it's like you're listening to them, what they're interested in, and pay attention to that. What's interesting is that when given a choice across the languages, only 7% of employees choose tangible gifts as the way they want to be shown appreciation. So this might be a little controversial with this group, but I'm a straightforward Midwestern. I think a lot of companies are losing and wasting a lot of money on gifts that aren't getting the impact that they're hoping for. Because I've had plenty of people say, if I never hear anything, if nobody stops by to see how I'm doing, if they don't help me out when I need some help, and I get, some gift that is actually not from the person, but from the company, I don't feel real valued. And so I think we need to rethink that a little bit. What we have found is that a personal gift, and that's a key part, it's about them, along with one of the other languages, can be quite impactful and meaningful. But just by themselves, I think we're losing value there. Physical touch, when I talk to HR people, we tease about having paramedics in the room because they're just say, oh, we're going to get sued. And relax about that. Physical touch, as we talk about it, really is, first of all, it's appropriate physical touch. And Dr. Chapman and I, when we were first, conceptualizing this, we're like, are we going to include physical touch or not? And he strongly advocated that we do, because didn't want to advocate a touchless society, even in the workplace, because there's certain times, situations, relationships where, a hand on the shoulder when you've just found out some bad news can be quite meaningful. But also, as we found, it happens. And what it is, it's spontaneous celebration. It's a high five when you finish a project, maybe a fist bump when you solve a problem, could be a congratulatory handshake when you make a big sale. Cross-culturally, because our resources are used in over 60 countries, and our book is in 24 languages, our assessments in 8 languages. Cross-culturally, a pat on the back is the most commonly accepted form of physical touch, but it's less than 1% of the population chooses physical touch as the main way they want to be shown appreciation. And there's regional and cultural differences. I've done work in New York and New Jersey, and this is what physical touch looks like there. It's like, hey, you sort of nod across the room. For our Hispanic and Latin friends, Southern Europeans, they're more comfortable with physical touch. They may kiss on the cheek when they greet, and no touch at all feels very cold and impersonal to them. So, you have to pay attention to it. And we say that really the recipient is always the person who chooses what's appropriate. I've had people tell me, yeah, I just need to give you a hug. And I'm like, well, I don't really need you to give me a hug. That's my boundary, not yours. So anyway, we've got to pay attention to that. Last common misconception is that appreciation really is the sole and primary responsibility of managers and supervisors. One of the things that we found is that people want to know that they're valued by both their supervisors and their colleagues. And especially as the workforce becomes younger, I think this is more and more true. Clearly, there used to be a saying, people don't leave a job, they leave a manager or supervisor. I think that's even less true. They don't leave a job, they leave a workplace culture and a sense of acceptance and value. And that appreciation is not primarily top down. Typically, traditional recognition it's sort of organizationally driven down through HR and supervisors, which is fine, except for we really see that appreciation flows in every direction. It's not related to the org chart. It can go clearly laterally. And in fact, colleagues, and we've learned that we teach and train team members how to show appreciation to one another, because it's too much weight and responsibility for managers and supervisors to sort of carry that for everybody. Clearly, they should relate that to the people in their day-to-day interactions. But not only laterally, it can go up the ladder from, let's say an administrative assistant to executive vice president, and she just says, hey, thanks for helping me out with my car problem last night. Again, it doesn't have to be work related. Or it can be across departments. Maybe you have somebody in IT who helps somebody in accounting that the interaction between their accounting program and QuickBooks or whatever isn't working, and they get helped out, so they can show appreciation even though there's no direct reporting relationship there. So we've created this online assessment. It's called the Motivating by Appreciation Inventory. For those of you who get books, there's a code in the back of the book that gives you the opportunity to take sort of our basic version about it, which will identify your primary and secondary least valued languages. Primary and secondary together are quite powerful. So if it's words and time or words and a gift, the least valued language is an important one because it's really your blind spot. It's the one that you don't really think about that much. It's not a weakness, it's just not important to you. And so you may have a team member who stops by to check in all the time. You're like, in fact, I had a CFO, she said, my language is quality time, but after 5 minutes, I'm booting them. I mean, I like to have them stop by and check in, but not a lot of time. And so sometimes we communicate appreciation in the way that's important to us, but it's not what others want. And if we do that, then we're really going to sort of miss the mark for them. Like we've talked about the specific actions and from whom you want those actions. And also in our expanded version, we talk identify how you don't want to be appreciated. In our expanded version, and I'll give you our website here in a minute so you can find out more information, but what we found is that the actions within a language differ from industry to industry. So an act of service for a school teacher may be watching her kids over recess. For a nurse, it might be answering her patient call lights so she can get caught up on charting. For somebody who's in construction, it might be stopping by at the end of the day and helping them clean up the job site. So we wanted to make the actions relevant. And so we have different versions for different industries, including remote employees, because, how do you spend quality time with somebody if you're working in different settings. So, and that leads into the remote and hybrid issue. I think most of us would agree hybrid work at least is here to stay. And one of the problems, actually, and I've written an article on that, we talk about remote workers as if they're a unitary group, but they really aren't, because there's different kinds, either people that just started working remotely or they did before, what their position is, whether the supervisor, manager, direct support, and age, and sort of cultural background, and also how much they work remote, whether it's 1 day a week or 4 days a week or whatever. So one of the things we did research both pre-COVID, during COVID, and after, and found out what remote employees want. And we actually found out what helped people stay sort of mentally healthy during COVID and the pandemic. And so there were some keys to effectively communicating appreciation remotely. First of all, you have to be proactive, because you don't have those spontaneous interactions where you walk down the hall and you stick your head in their office and say hi, or you don't see them in the break room, or coming up the elevator from the car or whatever. So if you don't reach out, it doesn't happen. And so we talk about different ways to do that, but you've got to be proactive. Secondly, just like we've talked about, the peer relationships are important. It's more or as important for peers to stay connected as it is for supervisors and a report. Clearly, a manager and their team member are going to talk about work kinds of things and stay in touch that way. But we found that it's important for people to stay in touch with their colleagues and at a personal level. Because one of the things that happens when we just have sort of this Zoom kind of meeting is it's pretty structured and it's work oriented, and we get in and we do it and we get out. But you don't have those sort of chances like you have when you're on site, of going in 5 minutes early to the meeting room, chatting a little bit, talking about the game this weekend, or finding out if their kids are playing soccer or whatever, or staying after a little bit. And so you don't have those sort of informal personal interactions. And we find that that's what makes people connected, that we know one another, we understand each other, we relate to one another's lives. And so for remote appreciation, you've got to have sort of this proactive structure, relate to peers, and not just about work, but at some level personally. And it's always best, especially if you're a leader, to share. Don't just ask questions, right? And one interesting thing, and Michael and I were talking about this ahead of time, is that there's some new neuroscience that's showing that there's a qualitative difference between the interaction that we have when we're sitting in the same room, across a table or desk from somebody, versus face-to-face electronically. That there's there's a little bit of, I don't know, sci-fi stuff that enters in here, but there's actually an interaction of our brain waves and so forth. And that's where a sense of understanding one another, of empathy, of connectedness happens. And you can think about it, if you've only met somebody online and then you meet them in person, and you get a fuller understanding of them. And this really relates to virtual teams. And I'm just going to say a quick note, and we're almost done here with this part of, if you work totally virtually and you've not met your other team members, I strongly suggest that, if at all possible, meet together in person occasionally. I think organizations that only meet virtually all the time and have never met personally, I think they're going to have a hard time keeping people. I think it's going to create more problems with communication and understanding collegial work. So it's not has to be everybody all the time, but maybe part of the team, in the summer, another part in the fall or whatever, but really consider that. Resources we have our books, obviously. And also, we created these codes that you can take the inventory, because some people don't want to read the book. We got it. And we can create a group summary for your group as well. And then I grew up professionally in sort of the social service world where people give a lot, they don't have a lot of money for training. So I created some low-cost training resources, a Train the Trainer course, where you can take this course and then use it's typically done in a half day, but can be a full day if you want, and take teams in your group through that. And so our main website there is appreciation@work.com. But for all this stuff, as well as the slide deck, just email me at yesdrpaul@gmail. So yesdrpaul@gmail.com. Also, we had an article written about us in the New York Times about our work with a mining company. It's sort of interesting, and so I'll shoot you some information about that. Last thing, if we don't apply this to some degree, I've wasted your time, I've wasted mine. So I just encourage you to start somewhere with somebody. Think about somebody you'd like to encourage, show appreciation to, probably somebody that you work with day to day, that if they didn't do what they did, your life would be tougher. Specify and identify for what you want to show appreciation, and figure out when and how, whether you're going to say it, write it. And like we talked about, words is probably the easiest way to start. Do it privately versus publicly. Some people don't like that public part, and it should go well. So let me stop there, and Michael will go to questions that you and others have for us. And let me get out of here.
All right. Well, firstly, I'd like to, on behalf of everybody on the call, immediately recognize and appreciate you, Dr. White, for getting into the space and deciding that this was a worthwhile venture. And what I mean, not today, but your pursuit and transition from, I understand you used to be advisory to family offices and small family businesses, and you decided to move into this area. So appreciate you for doing that, and the study. We certainly at the WorkProud side are big believers in what you're doing, the work you're doing, and the importance of appreciation for the human spirit. I remind everybody that when we were at elementary schools, we used to get gold stars and get appreciated for our efforts. And as we sort of get older, everything turns from the positive actually to the negative, and we find ourselves in the corporate world, and most people just spend their time criticizing. So by illustration, and to follow your lead, I'm going to show you all a little sort of example of and put Dr. White's words into practice. I'd like to thank Emily and Charles for the fantastic work they did in reaching out to Dr. White firstly, and encouraging him to attend and participate on the WorkProud webinar series. Full stop. Excellent work, great execution. And I think this may be the record in the greatest number of attendees on any one of the webinars, full stop. So I like that idea of doing that, and it sort of segues to a great idea or question that says, well, maybe in the remote stuff we're going to have to get to that world of appreciation where people can see those recognition posts in some context, particularly when it's relevant to that age group being Gen Zs, which I believe now are the majority of the workplace. And what I've just sort of demonstrated to everybody is what Dr. White's talking about is you've got to talk to remote people. You've got to talk to people in a language and a format that makes sense to them, i.e. for those that have got children, you probably can relate to me, which is I text message my children more than any telephone calls or face interactions. So they're, used to all that, that is the world that we live in. So that sort of segues to an important topic and question that I want to ask, and that is, well, what's the role of technology? Where does technology fit in this new world that we live in relative to the language of appreciation, the types of appreciation?
Yeah, and that's an area that we're moving into. I'm not a big tech guy. I mean, I use tech, but I don't understand as far as developing it. But moving into areas of how do we integrate the language of appreciation with technology platforms. And I think there's some simple ones. One is, you have people take the assessment and find out what their language and actions are, and you post that on their individual profile or a team, sort of an intranet kind of site. That's sort of the easy. But let's say, I think there's opportunity to take the different languages and say, okay, how do we use technology to help make this happen easier, right? We need, to make it easy. So let's say person's language is quality time and maybe remotely. And so you want to set up a call just to check in with them, maybe having integrated the company's calendar so that it can just boom, happen easily versus having to get out of a program, into a program, and so forth. And I think being able to also send reminders, let's say if, again, whether it's quality time or active service, and it's not your language, but you have team members, let's say you have 4 or 5 team members that you want to really focus on currently, is be able to set up a system of reminders and say, hey, have you checked in on Stephanie recently or whatever. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities that we're just starting to think about and get outside of just the reward recognition box that we've been in for a while.
Right. Certainly no disagreement from us. We think that technology has a massive role to play to address how to do it, the format for it, the consistency. The reporting on it is often missed and not thought through, and that is, you want to know where it is happening a lot and the impact it is having for further financial justification support.
Right.
Most importantly, you want to know where it's not happening and then determine why is it not happening and take some proactive steps. So the technology is not the appreciation, but it is the vehicle. And of course, 100% of the workforce of today worldwide has this in their pocket. And this is the first thing they pick up every day. It is the last thing that they put down, and they look at it 200 times a day. And we ask a simple question: how many times did it say, I see you, you matter, I appreciate you, your peers appreciate you, your peers are being appreciated, leaders are appreciating each one another or others, and create that construct. Some other questions. Generationally, what did you observe on the differences of format for appreciation? Were there patterns? Did they correlate to the ways in which people like to be appreciated?
Yeah, one of the interesting things, because we've done both research and a series of studies over time, because the generations change, right? But both generationally and even cross-culturally, it appears that the languages are appropriate and valid and desired by every group, but they change as far as the importance, as well as the actions. And I think that's the key part. Just like we talked about in quality time. For boomers, we were sort of enculturated that it was getting individual time with a supervisor or leader. For younger workers, it's clearly related to peers. For words, a handwritten note versus, a text. And so we have seen that the pattern has remained the same. And I'll say this because I've just got new research on cross-cultural stuff. But in North America and largely the Western Europe, Australia, words is consistently at like 45 to 50% chosen as the most frequent. Time and acts of service sort of come in second and third. They're often sort of close and they change rank a little bit, but in that 20 to 25, 28% range. And interestingly, that gifts in comparison to those is always the lowest. But again, it's sort of contextualizing it both culturally and age-wise. I mean, what's a gift? Could clearly be more electronically based, of sending a meme or a funny cartoon over the internet versus getting them, some chocolate. And by the way, Ira, I saw your note. There's a guy that sent me a note. It's been to my in-person training where we give out chocolates. He said, we're getting chocolate today. No, Ira, you're not. I don't know how to do that electronically yet. So.
All right. Another question asked, good one. Are there strategies to ensure that these ideas are sustainable? How do you kick off an initiative in an organization where you may feel that this is absent or a lack of, and then kicking something off, how is it maintained or sustained?
Yeah. So what's interesting, I think a lot of people think incorrectly about culture, what it is, how you change it. If you think about cultural, just generally in our life, it's about interactions, right? I mean, it's both personal interactions. It can be visual interactions from the media. It involves music. It involves food. It involves visual cues, art, and all that. And um, at work, we talk about culture and it becomes very truncated and sort of cold and objective. But one of the things we know is that culture both is structural and spontaneous. So, like, in the United States, we just celebrated Valentine's Day. We have our Thanksgiving Day. Canada has a different Thanksgiving Day. There's structure around the calendar, and certain things happen at different times of the year. But there's also spontaneity. I mean, there's an allowance for creativity. And we've had different places. Some have created T-shirts around the languages. Some have created posters. Some have created a song, visual effects, and different events. And so you have to think about both culture in the sense of structure kinds of things. So one of the things, we don't want you to create a bunch of new meetings, appreciation meetings. We want you to use the meetings you have, whether they're stand-ups or a weekly meeting or whatever, and incorporate a short time of appreciation in that. That's going to be more sustainable than trying to create a new behavior. And also, I mean, along the way, after the first few years of implementing those companies, I would get feedback about what the challenges were. And so my second book on the vibrant workplace addresses the 10 most common challenges of creating a culture of appreciation. A lack of support from management, pushback from supervisors, negativity, difficult to appreciate colleagues, cross-cultural issues. And so we've addressed that issue, and it's about sort of having a system. And we recently sort of created a more integrated system for larger companies, because we work with a lot of small organizations as well, of how do you put this in place so you have a system that's you can monitor and measure and find out if it's working.
I like that. So yes, systematic. I think that is a key element of the role of opportunity, the role of technology and the opportunity for many companies. How are you going to do appreciation at scale and systematically when you've got remote workers as a portion of the population, when you've got shift workers, when you may have global teams? This really is where the role of technology and the right technology is going to meet the needs and fill that gap. And then the other dimensions associated with trackability. If you can't report on it, you're not really doing anything within at least a corporate construct. You're just running a series of tactical executions that might work for a little bit, for sure. Right. But you've got to do this. If you're taking this seriously and you believe in some of the principles that were earlier established, people aren't just doing this for pay, and people are choosing who they want to work for. And you think that these are dimensional aspects of the workplace environment and the responsibility of HR management, then you got to take a lot of that more seriously. But anyway, let me wind up briefly. Firstly, I didn't even get to many of the questions. Firstly, thank you everybody for the questions. Two, there will be a copy of this sent out in terms of a recording. Three, we will send out an email for those that would like a copy of Dr. White's book. We'll collect the address information. I believe Dr. White may be open to sending out some copies of the slides. We'll certainly be providing Dr. White's contact information so that those that would like to reach out directly, assuming he doesn't send them all out with us, but we'll connect that, because I know that was a lot of the questions. I think additionally, for those that are interested, on March 1st, Employee Appreciation Day, there will be another webinar that we're going to host with Dr. Bob Nelson. For those that don't know him, also a fairly known and acclaimed author, and he's going to be talking about building cultures of recognition, some of the tools and techniques. Certainly for those that would be interested in having Dr. White come and present and speak to your company, I'm sure he'd be interested in doing that as well. Finally, I'll let everybody know that our work in research with another great gentleman in the industry, Dr. Rick Garlick, he has been undertaking a second phase of a research study on measuring pride in the organization and its impacts. That's a study that we're going to be releasing shortly. Most likely it'll be in April, but keep an eye out for that, because that's got some really interesting insights on where does appreciation and recognition and feedback influence individual and company pride, and what happens if you have high individual and company pride in terms of business outcomes. So without further ado, again, thank you. Greatly appreciate you giving us the time. To the audience that have come in, whichever part of the world you are listening in from, real time or follow-up, we appreciate you. This is why we do these events, and we wish you all a belated Valentine's Day and a great rest of the day on Thursday, good rest of the week. Thank you all.